Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of HR After Dark. And I'm Marcia.
And I'm Meghan.
And tonight we're going to tackle a topic that, HR professionals know a little too well: navigating workplace conflicts.
Yeah. Ugh.
Hey.
I think this is a really interesting topic, and it's going to happen in every company, no matter what size your company is. And it's all about how you handle it.
Yep.
So first things first, what's in your drink?
Well, wouldn't you like to know? But it is HR After Dark, so we're allowed to do this. So,
Yeah. Can. Yum.
So, yeah. What's in yours?
Peanut butter whiskey.
Ooh, one of my favorites. One of my favorites.
Is that HR appropriate?
It's After Dark.
It's approved.
HR After
Yeah.
Dark. Yes.
Yum.
We're allowed.
So if we are diving into this topic, I guess one of my first questions for you've been doing this for a long time. It's all about how you respond to a workplace conflict.
Yes.
What are some of the best strategies that you can encourage HR professionals or leaders or business owners to take when it comes to a workplace strategy?
Well, I think first you have to look at the situation. And you have to ask yourself, there's two sides to every story. And lots of times people like, this person said this is what happened, and creating all this conflict. And sometimes you just want to ask the correct person saying, hey, what's your side of the story? And you want to basically, you feel like Dick Tracy, you're going to put the puzzle pieces together, and you really want to have it out there. But I think it's really having the conversation and also the documentation behind it. A lot of HR is always told to write all this documentation down, and they don't. And I think today with the amazing AI that's out there and voice memos and all, there's no reason why you shouldn't be doing it. But I think what you have to do is sit down with somebody, look them in the eye, really try to understand them from their perspective, what they're thinking. And trust me, there are a lot of people that will pull the rug over your eyes, and they're very good at it. And sometimes you just have to make sure that you're like King Solomon. You have to look at both sides of the house, both perspectives. You cannot get angry at the situation. You're going to have to be as calm as the calm of the seas, and then basically have conversation to get things out in the open. Yeah. And once you start doing that, and you're doing that with confidence as well as with empathy, I think things happen. Now, there's always going to be that one or two people that is just your problem child, and they will tell you everything that you want to hear and need to hear, and you're going to have to put on basically your King Solomon hat again and say, you know what, that's great, but here's an instance that this happened. How do you want to respond to that? Yeah. And the best thing is you just can't get angry as a leader. And I think once they get angry and they get under your skin, they know they have you.
Yeah.
And it takes a little bit of time to understand. And I've learned this with my younger generation on my team. Sometimes they take it very personal, and they take it very...
Are you looking at me?
Maybe. And,
I can see your eyes just staring into my soul.
Well, it's true. I was the same way in my 30s. I took everything so seriously. What could I have done better and everything else? And sometimes it's not about you. Sometimes they have to look in the mirror, and it's like it's about them, and they don't always see it and not always self-aware.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it is about that. But I think the older I've gotten, the more I'm upfront I'm with people, the more of like, what's going on? Let's figure this out. This might be the last conversation we have. Are we very clear about this?
Yeah.
And it's hard to do that because I care so much about people. But I think with workplace conflicts, you've got to have to make sure that, number one, you always have at least 4 ears. I have 2. Bring somebody else in the room with you because it's one voice against the other. Number 2, always document everything that you're doing. Number 3, it's like, hey, this isn't personal. This is business. And sometimes they put the personal ears on sometimes too much, and the heart goes out. Keep in mind, we're in HR. You have to be consistent. If you do for one, you're going to have to do for somebody else, because if you don't think they're talking after dark, you're kidding yourself.
Yeah. I think the second thing that you said about making sure things are documented is one of the biggest lessons that managers, not just HR professionals can learn, but managers to learn. Yeah. Because the more facts you have about what actually occurred, it makes the situation from, he said, she said, to what actually happened.
Right.
And I think the more that you can document and teach the managers to actually do that, it's one of the most important important things.
Oh, absolutely.
The manager's learning that.
But you have to give them some slack too, because some people just aren't good at this. Some people, just like you, have stage fright. They don't like getting on stage because they get so nervous. It's one of the most things that gives their heart attack half the time.
Yeah.
You have to understand people aren't great at this. And you have to give them a little bit of slack saying, hey, let's walk you through this. Watch me how I do it. So for next time, you'll be able to do it on your own.
Sure.
Because once you get used to it, and there's a way to do it where it's like you sort of take, like I have my theory, I still have my statement. It controls you or you control it.
Yeah.
And every time I go into a sticky situation, I literally tell myself that statement. And I say that for a purpose to say, I'm either going to control the situation or it's going to control me.
Yep.
And I want to go out there with a win-win situation. So I'm going to make sure it's a win-win situation. And so you got to be very careful, because there's a lot of people right now who are connivers out there and will tell you exactly what you want to hear versus what you need to hear.
Yep.
So that's another key you're going to have to pull out of people, because it's sometimes you're going to have to pull it out like, that's great. I'm really proud of you for that. Let's go back to this.
Yeah.
We have to address this. What exactly happened? What was your role with it? What did you do?
Yep.
And this is what I'm hearing. What's your say on this?
Right.
And you have to go back and forth. And then sometimes, listen, people don't like basically letting people know they screwed up. And nowadays, more than ever, I don't know what happened in 2020, but people just cannot let people know that they've messed up. And to me, as a leader, I think it's so important to take on that responsibility. I'm the first person to say, hey, I messed up. You know, and I do that on purpose so that my team feels comfortable as well, saying, hey, I messed up.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that, because no one's perfect.
Yeah.
But I do believe HR people think they should be perfect all the time. And it's not about being perfect.
No.
It's about getting to the situation, getting to the story, having a firm fact, and basically being clear on expectations.
Yeah.
And expectations is another thing we should talk about, because I think a lot of times expectations, they go into a meeting, but what they ever do after that meeting and say, so just to be clear, our expectations of our conversation are this.
Yeah.
And that never usually happens. And I really do think you should record that, or you should basically put it in writing. So after our conversation today, this is what I heard. Are we on the same page?
Yeah. Or ask them what they heard.
Exactly.
Because they could be thinking about something else or
Completely.
interpreting it in a different way.
Yes.
So asking them what they heard in that conversation.
Yeah, I remember we had Lead on last week, and we had a great example of, we had like a U-shaped kind of room with all of our people. And so what Kim did was basically whisper in one's ear what she said and pass it to the next person. And by the time it got to the very last person, it actually had like 5 words that were different in it. You know, and no one's fault. It was just what they had heard was different but was told.
Yeah.
And that comes through every kind of horrible, uncomfortable conversation.
Yeah. That's why I am such a fan of the writing things down.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because we couldn't write that down when we were playing Whisper Down the Lane.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
And I like there's AI tools out there. Like if you do a Zoom, I just did a Zoom recording and it actually had the whole transcript next to it. And I said, this is great. So now I have it in writing, and I actually went over it before I forwarded it out to the team.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to make sure that it was actually capturing what I said was basically in the video. And it did. And so now I actually have a recording of all that. So there's like no mistakes that nobody got my message.
Right.
You know, and I think it's the same thing when we have like just a sitting down with an HR. Now, yeah, be careful. Certain things you have to, because of legal purposes.
Yep.
You know, you want to be careful about if it's really like a sexual harassment, and I'll be very careful about recording anything.
For sure.
But you want to make sure that with workplace conflicts that you basically make sure that there's a way that everybody's on the same page.
Yeah. And I think another important topic with this is knowing when you need help.
Yes.
Knowing when to raise your hand and say, this is out of my scope.
Yes.
I need a third party to jump in, whether it's an employment attorney or if it's just somebody else to come in for some mediation to understand the severity of the situation, and not being afraid to say that, because I think that also goes back to being accountable.
Yeah.
Being vulnerable to say that you don't know something,
Yeah.
which also creates trust.
Yes.
That is what will make people trust you, when you are authentic and vulnerable. So I think just being able to say that is huge.
And sometimes you have to hire somebody on the outside to come in for like mediation and just basically sit down and be like, this is what happens, and facilitate, because sometimes there's too much emotion involved. you're never going to get a true answer with too much emotion involved.
Right.
And sometimes having an outside person that doesn't know either one to basically say, hey, we're going to have this conversation, we're going to get it moving. And you have to figure it out. If it's holding you up in your company, if it's holding up in your career, if something's holding you up, you got to get to the bottom of it.
Yep.
And take the time and effort to do it the right way.
Yeah. And I think that, we have a lot of clients that will call us with employee relations problems
all the time.
that they just want another set of eyes on something, but we are the first ones to be like, you're past us. We need to call, we need to bring in some counsel to help. So I think that's, that's something else to think about.
Oh yeah. And there's a lot of people are very angry right now. And I don't know if it's because what's going on in the world or geopolitics, there's an election this year. They're angry and it's coming out in the workforce. It's coming out with just, we're doing workplace investigations. To me, I'm like, what is stemming all of this? And people are even angry on the road. There's more road rage happening right now. I mean, people are just have no patience whatsoever. And so to me, I'm trying to figure out what is really going on.
Yeah.
I know people are coming back into the workforce and are not really happy about that. But to me, I'm like, I think people also miss each other. And so now it's basically just learning to get along with each other and playing nice in the sandbox. It's really that simple.
Yeah. I remember in my first role out of college, I had to let someone go for being under the influence on the job.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't know myself as a leader yet. I didn't, obviously, I had HR support, but, you're kind of tiptoeing around harder conversations. But I do think that gets easier as you get older.
You do.
And you have more experience in these harder conversations. But I think having the ability, my personal opinion is the ability to be firm and fair with that empathy tied in, you can't go wrong because you're doing the right thing. You're supporting your business, but you're doing the right thing for the, the person as well, because it's, it's a win-win for everybody.
And always the theme is always do the right thing. Just always do the right thing. You can go to bed knowing you do the right thing. You have to wake up every day, look at that mirror in the bathroom.
Yep.
And you have to ask yourself, did I do the right thing?
Yeah.
And as long as you can say, I did the right thing today, then life is good.
Yeah.
But for some people, they just don't, or maybe I shouldn't have done this, I shouldn't have done that. To me, I'm a vision person. So I write it out exactly how I'm going to play it out.
Oh, I know. I know you do.
And I think it's really important to do that.
Yeah.
Because at this point, I know
important.
that, again, it controls you or you control it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Remember in our first episode, we talked about what managers can also do.
Yeah.
When it comes to the HR stereotype.
Yeah.
I feel that so many businesses created managers without any professional development whatsoever.
Oh, yeah.
So it's you do really good at your job. You're a manager now.
Yep.
So they're not prepared to have hard conversations.
Yep.
They're not prepared to hold people accountable.
Right.
So I think now more than ever is the ultimate time to take those first-time managers and train them, which would include some of the HR professionals, of course. But the more you can put into your managers to have, going back to that counterpart HR person and a manager as a tag team, they're prepared, you're prepared, no surprises for the employees when things come up.
Oh, yeah.
So just training, thinking about those managers who really need the help is a really important thing right now.
As long as they're coachable.
Yeah, I agree.
There are people that I will say you need some coaching, and they're like, "Oh, okay," and they just wipe it off.
Yeah.
And to me, I'm like, everybody, doesn't matter what level you are, should be like, how can I make myself better?
Yeah.
What else could I be doing? Ask those hard questions, and ask. That's why we love EOS, because it has that question. What am I doing? What should I keep doing, and what should I stop doing?
Yeah.
And you would get a group of people of 8 people, and you go around for each person about what that happens, and be real about it. It is amazing of how many things people are doing that person never knew, that I was like, I didn't know that affected you like that.
Remember, we were so nice in the beginning?
Oh, yeah.
I want you to, be hard.
That's changed.
Yeah. Yeah. Change your shirt.
Yeah.
Now we're like, stop doing this. I think it's but that's what created trust. You're not going to retaliate against a person for them giving you feedback.
Right.
So I think once you have that trust too.
And that vulnerability.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
And if to be a good leader, you have to be able to take the good days and the bad days. And it's not going to be perfect every day. And that's okay.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm still learning. People still tell me, I wish I knew this. I'm like, you know what? You're right.
Yeah.
I should have probably told you that sooner. I'm so sorry about that. But, I think they're surprised I say that you're right. But I think you got to be real.
Yeah. So I'm going to go back to something you said a few minutes ago. This is a personal opinion that I'm asking for you. So just putting it out there.
I'm ready.
Get ready for me. How do you know how do you know a person's uncoachable?
It's an excellent question. When they're uncoached, there are two types of people. There are people that will ask me all the time, how could I be better? What I can do differently? And there are other people who are like, okay, I know. And I'm like, well, if you knew, then I wouldn't want to coach you, but I'm going to tell you I need to coach you. And I think people are either they're open to it and receptive, or they're not. And I think sometimes it's really hard that I got to tell them, like, are you coachable? And I've had people whom I'm very fond of in my life, and some don't even work here anymore. I'm like, you're just not coachable. And then they got defensive on me, and I said, well, let me tell you why. And that's really, really hard. My husband's a coach, baseball coach, and he says the same thing. He has young kids that are freshmen. He goes, I can tell right away if they're coachable or not. At that young, he can tell if they're coachable or not. And sometimes it's just sitting down with them and just saying, what's holding you back from listening?
Yeah.
And I'm not really trying to hurt somebody out with that. I remember one person I told, that this person, she handled her hair too much during sales calls. And I was only doing it to look out for her and to say, hey, once you did that, the fact that those guys saw you did that, they were walking all over you, because it made you look nervous.
Yeah.
And she got so defensive on me. And I sat there, I'm like, I'm not trying to be defensive. I said, I want you to be aware of yourself, of your what's the word? The environment around you. Because be self-aware of this stuff, because other people pick it up.
Yeah.
And then once they see they have you, they're going to take advantage of you. And so right away, like the whole rate, we had to lower the rate and everything else. I said, we should have had full control of that conversation.
Yep.
And I said, and as soon as you started doing that, they knew they had us.
Yep.
And she disagreed with it. And I just sat there like, I'm just letting you know. Like when I started interviewing a long time ago, I used to tap the pencil all the time, and I found out I was just nervous, and I didn't realize I did it. So I did videos of myself, and I said, holy tamale, like I do that all the time, and it was all nervousness. I had no idea. And I had for years people telling me how fast I spoke, and I said, I don't talk fast. Well, I recorded myself one time. I didn't understand a word I said. And I said, I guess,
like, what am I selling?
I guess I do need to talk slower.
Tell me what I do when you imitate me about my hair.
Oh yeah, I told you. You take your hair, and when you're ready to tell me something or you're nervous about something, you're like, okay, gang, all right, this is what we're gonna do. And and I'm like, oh, here it goes, and I'm just like laughing, and I'm just like, you okay?
I think about that every time I want to deliver information. Now I'm like, hands to yourself, hands in your pocket, hands to your side. But it's good. It's like you want to be your best self, and you want to surround yourself with people who are going to make you better.
All the time.
So you giving me that information makes me better. I think one of the best things I can take away from this conversation is, thinking about when to raise your hand that you need help. Number one, training the team around you to have those harder conversations. They've never done it. You can't expect them to be able to have those conversations without it, having the background in doing that and life experience.
I'm going to tell you one more thing that happened in my workplace environment. One time, a long time ago, and I came into an environment, and there was definitely tension between me and another manager. And I was new. I was the bubbly one. I was happy sunshine all the time. And she just wasn't that way. And so she told me, she was just like, I saw her make fun of me in front of my colleagues one time, and she didn't know I was in a cube listening and hearing all this.
Yep.
And I called my mentor. I'm just like, I want to punch her in the face. And and
I'm assuming you didn't.
I was 30 years old.
Yeah.
And she's like, no, you're gonna go in that room and you're gonna take her to lunch today. I'm like, I don't want to take her to lunch. And she's just like, yeah, get over that. Take her to lunch. So I hung up the phone. She was in the office next to me. I went around the office. I said, hey, do you want to go to lunch today? She turned around and she said, today, me? I said, yep, just the two of us. She's like, okay. Well, lo and behold, she wanted to go to lunch every single day after that. She learned about her family and about the struggle of getting pregnant, everything. So much so that she became like my ally. I needed her to be my ally.
Yep.
And we're on the same team. And it hurt me to do that, but I had to do that. And I had to break that ice and have that. We didn't need conflict with the whole team seeing it. And so I had to bite the bullet. Yeah. And it was great because she became a good friend of mine, and she actually ended up doing some great things, and she's in pharma right now, and she's very successful.
That's great.
And she still keeps in contact, and she'll reach out on LinkedIn, how you doing out there, yada, yada. And that's all because I had to put my ego aside. I went around the corner and I said, let's do lunch. And that's what it took.
Yeah.
But sometimes you have to do the upper hand. That. Yeah, you have to do that because everybody has a story.
Yep.
Everybody's going through something.
Exactly. You never know what
And
people
never
are going through.
assume.
Well, we have to wrap up, but we didn't even get to talk about radical candor. So that's for another conversation. Yeah, because that is just that's one of my favorite topics.
Yeah.
That could very well flow into this conversation.
Totally.
So
agree.
We will tackle it another time. But thank you all for joining us today on HR After Dark, and we'll see you next time.
Take care.